don't have a clue what to make of all this. Please, someone explain what happened yesterday in a way that I can understand. I continued helping myself to the food in the mansion's kitchen. That massive commercial refrigerator had everything. I could eat and drink as much as I liked. And I have more than enough to eat even if the typhoon didn't clear up for a week. With a bottle in one hand, half of which I'd already drunk, I had myself to some sliced ham. I wonder just how expensive this stuff is. Man, you ingredients are out of luck. If only you had Goda-san cook you, you could have been reborn as much more incredible food. I looked at the clock. Very soon, it'll be midnight. October 5th, the second day, would end. The insanity of yesterday's October 4th didn't seem real. That was how little had happened after my so-called test. Nothing was happening. No phone calls, no letters, no one coming to see me, no one coming to attack me. Not a goddamn thing. Give me back all the time and energy I wasted being on edge. An entire day of all 24 hours. And absolutely nothing happened. I'm sure that nothing will come to happen as well. A full 24 hours ago, I was called to the front of the mansion by Beatrice. There, I was given some kind of weird test to do with determining the successor to the head or something. I gave a serious answer in my own way, but unfortunately, they just didn't seem to be getting each other. Beatrice got bent out of shape for no reason and stopped talking to me. I yelled at her to say something, but she wouldn't say a word. Then, I asked where Maria was, and she just told me to go to the chapel, and went away. What an astounding anticlimax. Stupid as it was, it's still a test, so at least tell me whether I passed or failed, for hell's sake. Well, is she trying to say... What is she trying to say? Good work, your results will be mailed to you later. Or something. In any case, I then headed to the chapel. Both George, Aniki, and Jessica had been killed after failing their tests. I couldn't let Maria be killed too. Besides, I thought this could be a chance to catch whoever it was while they were in the process of trying to kill Maria. When I was young, Jessica often told me that I'd get in trouble if I went near the chapel. So, I'd never been there. But I at least knew where it was. I couldn't sense anyone there, but there was a bundle of keys lying in front of the door. I thought this might be a message to open the door to the chapel, but after trying all the keys, I found that none of them fit. I also called Maria's name, but there was no answer whatsoever. Huh. So you were told Maria was gonna be here, and you found the bundle of keys, and yet none of them opens the door. So then why is this bundle of keys here in the first place? I searched around the chapel, but there was a limit to what I could do in a pitch black with just a flashlight. I realized that this key bundle might be a set of master keys, which could possibly open the door to the mansion. Finding no sign of Maria, I returned to the mansion. The mansion was wrapped in silence. I guess so. Those are the master keys for the mansion, so they cannot really open the chapel door in that case. I mean, we discussed this in game 2 as well, from what I remember. It was stated in red that only the chapel key can unlock the door to the chapel, so I guess there's that. And then a horrible stench. Still, it's pretty amazing how good humans are at adapting. Technically, that smell was still pervading the entire mansion. It's probably Kenzo. Either he got burned to death or he is farting all over the place. But I've grown completely used to it and stopped minding it by this point. It didn't feel like anything more than any old house where someone had burnt some meat. Yeah, some meat has been burnt, alright. The stench knocked me back on first entering, but I ignored it and decided to head to the dining hall. Where I found all those corpses that were in such a sorry state that Gora-san and Kumasawa-san had hesitated to speak of them in any detail. They were the remains of the very first victims, now Nazi and the rest. Each of them have half of their head dramatically splattered out. It was such a gruesome sight that, even without knowing a thing about examining corpses, I could pronounce them 100% dead. And to top that, the remaining half of their faces were left like normal, so it was even easy to identify them. Corpse discovered in the dining hall. Her head was half destroyed. It seems reasonable to think that she was murdered with something like a powerful gun. However, the witnesses don't believe that she was killed with a gun. Corpse discovered by the rose garden arbor. There was a single hole right in the center of his forehead. It seems reasonable to think that he was shot with a gun or something. They really pulled out all the stops for these corpses. And finally, the bodies here weren't just the 6 of the first Twilight. They had grown in number, and now included one more. And the 7th corpse was Maria. She was lying next to Aunt Rosa, as though sleeping alongside her. I cried at the death of an innocent young girl. Corpse discovered in the dining hall. Unable to locate any notable external wounds, Matter speculated that it may have been some type of poisoning. The most peaceful method of inviting a person to the Golden Land. Well, whether this supposed test ended in success or fail on Maria's part, or if there even was a test to begin with, I guess in the end, she died anyway. Oh, Beatrice. Like, what is it that made you do all this? If the hidden culprit... Like, if the hidden culprit is Shannon, then... What could possibly have gone through her mind when she decided on murdering Maria? What were her thoughts when she murdered Maria at that point? I mean, it is as I said before. It really feels like I have to go through over 50 layers of complexity in order to truly understand Shannon. Like, in order to understand Beatrice. You truly are the most enigmatic that I've ever seen. If the hidden culprit turns out to be Shannon or Sayo, you know. And that the crew away my dad and the others have died. Okay, well, I guess this can be a good time for me to contemplate on all this. I mean, you know, I keep going with the ideas of Shannon having like multiple names and personalities, which not only fits the theory that I have for countering the red web, but like also tying her to Beatrice, who is the main focus of this entire mystery. And if not Shannon, then it could be anyone else, which I may go through the same thought process and all that. But I may think of the connections that tie Shannon to Beatrice, or think about how Shannon did the murders in the first games, or whatever, but I guess it was inevitable for me to start thinking on Shannon herself, and what it all means in the grand scheme of things, like in regards to all her past moments. Like, if I am to think of Shannon as the suspect. I mean, what do I make of her now, if I'm to start going that route? Like, are we talking about independent split personality? Where she switches between Shannon, Sayo, human Beatrice, and witch Beatrice? Like a mental disorder? Does she do it consciously? Unconsciously? Or is she a really good actor who puts on masks? Like, one thing that I always use as an example is like one particular student from the very first Danganronpa, whose name I'm not gonna mention, of course, but that student has two personalities. One of the regular student and the other of a serial killer. And one personality sleeps while the other is awake, and they keep switching between the two personalities. When the first personality wakes up, they are not aware of the actions that the second personality did, and vice versa. Now, there are going to be some exceptions when it comes to emotions being involved, that both personalities share the same emotions. They feel each other's emotions and connect in that sense. But when it comes to actions and remembering past actions, like memories and such, that's a completely different story. Like, is that really the case here? Same case here? Well, maybe. But I guess if I'm to try and think like... I don't know, I guess if I'm to try and think like one level higher, the way I did before, like, one could ask, Is this what Ryukishi would go for? Like, if I am to think that Ryukishi is challenging me and that, you know, he hates me and such, then he's gonna try to make things as hard as humanly possible. Like, every single way imaginable. So, Shannon going for all these personalities on purpose and being aware of every action she makes, like an actor of sorts, it's probably more than likely. It's probably more than likely what Ryukishi is gonna try and go for, and not just a switch of personalities where memories are not shared and such, like a mental disorder. It's more so that she's aware of this and that she's a pretty good actor and such. And because of that, it makes me think back on game 2, when Shannon was protecting George against Beatrice. And that, if I am to go with my current theories, that would imply that Shannon was talking to herself and debating over the concept of love. Like, in similar fashion to what I was thinking before about Angie talking to Maria about the book and Maria's past events. Except you can like go a level higher and think that Angie was actually having a conflict with herself about whether Maria's pajama party actually happened, or like the way Maria described it, or it was actually a completely different way of thinking about it. So yeah, it kind of makes me think that to the idea that Shannon was talking to herself and debating over the concept of love and such. Like, similar to Angie, when she had that conflict and such. Or when Eva was talking to Evatrice, that's another example. Like, similarly, Shannon talks to Witch Beatrice in that aspect. It's as if all those moments we had in Game 2 with Shannon and Beatrice are to be taken in a inner conflict of different values and mentalities, like duking it out and like to see who comes victorious in the end. I don't know. Like, I guess to summarize my train of thought over here, Beatrice is a broken mess of a person who does not even understand what she's thinking of most of the time. Not even she understands how to think like most of the time, and has like conflicting thoughts in the form of Shannon and Sayo, and human Beatrice and witch Beatrice and 50 other personalities if she has more like multiple personalities and such. And Ryukishi wants me to try and figure out Beatrice, even though she herself cannot. In which case, wow. That is totally a wow moment over there. I ran about the mansion swinging my hat stand spear, yelling, "Come out here, you bastard." You know what I also just realized? I don't even know what Sayo is really like, if we are to go that route. Like, who is Sayo? What is she like? Did we actually see Sayo talk before? Or just Shannon and Beatrice? I mean, I guess if I'm to think back on the previous moments we had with Beatrice, when Angie died and all that, it kind of makes me think that whenever we seen Beatrice like switch between like when we saw Beatrice talk normally and such in low voice, in comparison to when she started talking like her usual self, like cackling and being all cocky and such. Maybe the Beatrice that was talking all normally and such with low voice and such is Sayo, maybe. In which case, maybe human Beatrice would be Sayo in that case. And it's not right to say that both human Beatrice and Sayo are completely different personalities. Maybe they're one and the same. Yeah, there's a lot of problems to discuss with this kind of idea. I mean, in regards to George, for example, does this mean that Shannon doesn't really love George? Or rather, Shannon herself is trying to make things work by loving by loving George and such. But Beatrice and Sayo are saying that it won't work. A reason why we had that conflict between Shannon and Beatrice back in game 2, like in Natsu's room. I mean, what about Kanon? Does he know about all this? Like, how does he factor into all this? Like, we've seen him interact with Shannon and Beatrice on, like, multiple occasions. Because, in retrospect, when you think of all the interactions Kanon had with Shannon and Beatrice, even with someone like Maria whose role we start to understand, or at the very least, understand at face value as of now. Even with someone like Maria, one would think that Kanon is the one who truly knows what Shannon is really like, and more than likely helped Shannon in the Twilights. Like, him being an accomplice, or at the very least, him knowing about what was going on, seems highly, like, probable. So, yeah, it makes me think that it's not just Maria, but also Kanon has some doing in all this. Like, if there is someone who knows Shannon more than anyone else on the island, more than even Shannon herself, it would be Kanon, not Maria. Kanon would know Shannon more than anyone else on this island. Not just island, but this entire world. So, with that being said though, what does Kanon know? How does he factor into all this? We know how Maria factors into all this, but not Kanon. And to top it all off, we've seen him interact with both Shannon and Beatrice too. And if I am to vaguely look back, it almost looks as if he talks to both Shannon and Beatrice independently. As if Shannon truly has that split personality, like, mental disorder that I discussed previously, and not the one who puts on masks. So it kind of goes like a counter to what I was thinking, that Ryukishi is going with the idea that she just puts on masks to make things more difficult, and instead it goes for the easy route that we have like a mental disorder, like Shano has like a mental disorder and switches between personalities, like either consciously or unconsciously, not being aware of each other's personalities. So I don't know if I really want to go with that idea, unless, again, maybe I shouldn't take it at face value, and maybe I should look at it at, like, as something more abstract than what I'm imagining. Like, how I should view it, I just couldn't tell you. And it's just confusing all around, because we've seen Kanon, like, 100% against Beatrice. And despite that, he still helped with the Twilights? Like, Kanon hates Beatrice to the core, and yet he would help Shannon in doing the murders? In doing the Twilights? Like, Maria, I can understand that, but Kanon? Not really. Like, if I am to go with how much he opposed Beatrice before, maybe he is opposed to what is going on, and he's not helping. Thus, even if he knows who Shannon truly is, he may not be an accomplice. He is like, nope, no way, Jose, not gonna partake in your ritual here. And yet, I cannot help but think that he did help. Like, he is not to be excluded from the equation. Like, I don't know. And there's probably like 50 other problems that I'm still gonna have to debate on this. Like, what about the other servants? What do they know? Genji? Kumasawa? Hello? I mean, I brought the theory about how Kumasawa is linked to Shannon in similar fashion to Virgilia and Beatrice, but still, I mean, she has to know why all this stuff is happening in the first place. I don't know. But there was absolutely no sign of anyone else. Thinking that they might be hiding somewhere and scheming to attack me from behind, I went around searching for possible hiding places. Sometimes being cautious, sometimes intentionally letting my guard down, trying all kinds of things, but in the end, not so much as a kid appeared. Then, morning came. My attention and fatigue, mixed it together with my drowsiness, made for the worst kind of dawn. Humans are pretty incredible. Even though I didn't know where the hell the murderer was hiding, I was prioritizing drowsiness and fatigue over worrying for my own life. By this time, I was starting to feel pretty ridiculous. I walked around the mansion for a full 6 hours until dawn broke, yelling at them to show themselves. I had done a painstaking search, tired myself out, and even let my guard down. Still, no one was coming to attack me. So at that point, I just said screw it, do whatever you want. The boat won't come until the typhoon passed. They were saying on TV that it wouldn't pass until tomorrow. So, I had a whole day to waste. The idea of just lazing about didn't seem very appealing. So, even though I knew it would probably make the police mad, I decided to play a detective a bit. First, the dining hall, where the very first murders occurred. The 6 who were killed in the beginning really were pitiful to look at. The weapon was probably a gun. Maybe their heads were split by something powerful, like a magnum bullet or a shotgun. Seemed like a valid reasoning. In comparison, Maria, who was the 7th body, had died in a far better and cleaner way. I mean, this is weird. Ever since game 1, I have gone with the idea that some people have been killed with a gun. Guns have been quite prevalent in these games, so it's not really far-fetched to think that. But the only reason why we're even assuming it's a gun is because of their heads getting smashed in half or clear gunshots on their heads. Well, not clear gunshots, but clear holes on their heads that make me think of gunshots. And possibly using some heavy blunt object to smash their heads to hide that they were initially killed with a gun. But there has to be signs of a gunfight in these rooms if some gun was used. Like, are there no remaining shells or bullet casings around here? Are there no bullet holes in the wall? If people started panicking and moving around the room when the gunshots began, you would think that our hidden culprit would miss some of these shots, and some tables or walls would be hit with bullets. Has there been any struggle? Do the wounds on the head have like any form of like gunshot residue? Some burnt wounds that tell us that a gun has been used near their heads? Cause, you know, it's basic Detective 101. You use a gun near a body part, there will be like some explosion burning residue and such that would burn the wound as well. And that can tell you that a gun was used in the near proximity of the body, or it was used at a distance, depending on the burned wounds and such. Like, do the wounds on the head have any form of gunshot residue in that sense? Did anything break in this room in the first place? Do the positioning of the bodies tell us something about how this all happened? I mean, this is basically murder investigating 101 all here. And, okay, maybe this stuff can be explained in Red, if we are to talk about the Twilights with Beatrice, but what about Balor here? What can he find here? What is he observing here? What does he see from his eyes when he looks at this room? Does he only see a bunch of dead bodies? Or are there like multiple details around the room that you can see that can create ideas and such? I can tell you, my eyes are limited in terms of what to see. Especially since I don't even have eyes in the first place. Yo! At a glance, there were no external wounds, and it wasn't clear how she had been killed. But there were signs that bubbles had been foaming from her mouth. And it looked like a typical death by poisoning that you might see on a TV drama. Okay. That's actually a good detail. Don't know if it will help in the end, but hey, maybe it was not poisoning. Maybe she had an epileptic seizure and died. Wasn't Maria called out to the chapel and given her test there? Then why is she here in a corpse-filled dining hall, lying next to her mother, dead? Assuming that the cause of death was poison, who gave it to her? Her clothes aren't disturbed at all. It's hard to imagine that she was forcibly pushed down and given an injection of poison. It's probably better to assume that she was given a poison capsule or something and made to swallow it. If there are no injection shots on the body, then yeah, it can be that she swallowed a poison capsule. That or she inhaled poison. It is possible for someone to die of poison via inhaling as well, with their nose or mouth. Learned that the hard way. That said, compared to the violently mutilated corpses scattered about this room, Maria's corpse was far too clean. With a gun, all you need to do is pull the trigger. But poison, whether injected or made to be swallowed, will take a lot more effort. Bearing in mind the culprit's brutal nature, too, I felt that Maria's death alone had clearly been given special treatment. Why was Maria alone given a sleep-like death? Well, it is easy to imagine that Maria accepted her death, so she didn't struggle whatsoever. As for the hidden culprit, well, there is definitely a special connection between the two. And our hidden culprit didn't want something as brutal as that. They wanted something more peaceful for Maria. She was killed. So in that sense, I still feel very sorry for her. There can be no doubt about that. But for some reason, the manner of Maria's murder in particular seemed very courteous to me. Maria had her hands joined on her chest, in a way that the dead often do. Did Maria do that herself before dying? Isn't this usually something done by someone else after the person dies? Maria was resting in peace, as though sleeping together with her mother, whose head was half crushed. For some reason, the contrast really bugged me. There are probably a lot of mysteries surrounding Maria's death, starting with the cause. And more than anything else, the biggest mystery of this dining hall was the quote-unquote pitfalls. The pitfalls that both Uncle Krau's group and Goda-san's had mentioned. After the 6 had been killed, 5 more had fallen through pitfalls and been captured. What are pitfalls? Those things that suddenly open and you fall through them? Those things that suddenly open and you fall through them, right? The floor was firmly laid with a majestic, if a bit worn out, carpet. It was clearly a single piece. If pitfalls are meant to open up in it, there will have to be a seam in that one place. And anyway, if there was some trick like a pitfall, wouldn't it creak when you walked on it? No matter how much I walked over or ran my hands over the carpet, I just couldn't imagine that a pitfall was hidden there. I mean, it is as Beller is saying here. Since there is a carpet, it is much more difficult for pitfalls to work and have people fall in them. I mean, the only way I can see this is if our hidden culprit took away the carpet before the family meeting and then put it back there after the job was done. I mean, it would take a lot of time, but certainly not impossible. However, what I am curious is if there are pitfalls under the carpet in the first place. Like, you should totally check that, Beller. Under the carpet, that is. In the first place, it would be one thing if a single person had fallen, but it was a full 5 people. From what I could piece together from all these stories, each one of them had fallen from a different location. So, at the very least, there had to be 5 separate places concealing pitfalls. So, what does this mean? Was this room actually made with pitfalls across the entire floor? So that with a single button press, you could open up a pitfall in the location of your choice? Like some kind of contraption like that? That kind of ridiculous mechanism would be surprising even in a ninja mansion. But even so, if Dad and the rest heard about this, maybe they'd say, well, I wouldn't put it past grandfather. You bet he'd do this, he'd make this. In any event, I didn't learn anything more than that from the dining hall. Yeah, as it was mentioned previously, There being pitfalls, like here in the dining hall, seems unlikely. And our culprit having 5 people fall in these pitfalls seems unlikely as well. I mean, I can imagine there being one pitfall around here, and our hidden culprit forced them to fall in it, like one by one. It wasn't that this happened during the struggle where all sorts of pitfalls opened up, like all willy-nilly and such. There could be just one pitfall, and then our hidden culprit pointed a gun at them and forced them to fall into that one pitfall. I mean, still, whether we're talking about one pitfall or 5 people, like pitfalls, there would have to be some distinct markings telling us that there is a pitfall. Like, that they have been trapped, like, under the mansion, and not in Kuadorian, which we assume is kilometers away from the mansion. I guess I'm pretty sure we're gonna learn more if we go and confront Beatrice with red and blue truths in that sense. Until then, I guess I'm gonna try and think about it a little more in my spare time. Do the pitfalls not exist? Or do they exist but I just cannot find them? Immature that I am. I cannot say for sure. Since they claim that the pitfalls were there, I cannot ignore the pitfalls even if I can't find them. The next ones to be killed had been Jessica and Georgianiki. I'd already discovered Georgianiki when I was called out for my test. He was called out to the harbor in the Rose Garden and shot in the forehead, probably with a gun. As for Jessica, she was called to her own room on the 2nd floor of the mansion. I found the door to her room locked. But that wasn't a problem at all since I had the master keys. And the inside of the room was horrible. But the corpse was nothing I hadn't already familiarized myself with in the dining hall, so I built up a bit of immunity. The phone receiver was dangling off the hook. Was she killed while on the phone with me? And just was leaning against the wall right next to it, with half of her head splattered about. Yeah, it's not that she's leaning against the wall, as far as I can see. She's lying on the ground here. As far as I could tell by looking at the scene, it looked as though she had been killed while on the phone. Corpse discovered in her own room on the 2nd floor of the mansion. Her head was half destroyed. It seems reasonable to think that she was murdered with something like a powerful gun. And destroyed herself with her own strike with George's counter-attacking type barrier. In that case, had the culprit been there before her eyes? I ain't gotten that impression from Jessica's voice over the phone. I'm pretty sure Jessica said, "They got me." It's probably best to assume that she had already received a fatal wound at the time of the phone call. That's right. And she also said this. Yeah, she definitely said that. From what I could tell by looking at Jessica's corpse, there were no wounds on her other than the damage to her head. They got me. And her saying that she will be a corpse with half her head spilled out. This is very specific. Like, if we are talking in human claim, this means that she knew how the hidden culprit was gonna kill her. Either the hidden culprit told her, or she did this to herself, in that case. Not to mention that she was on the phone in the first place. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the theory that our hidden culprit intentionally let Jessica talk on the phone with Beller. And after a while, bang! The culprit did exactly what Jessica said and got half her head destroyed. This wasn't like what happened to Kirie, where the culprit tried to get inside the room while she tried to tell Beller all the details, like as fast as possible. It wasn't like that. Here, all culprit took their time and possibly told Jessica what to do before her death. But what about Jessica's words when she said, "They got me"? I wonder what that means. They got me. And then she was injured seriously enough that she steeled herself for death and then died halfway through with a phone call. I mean, in magic claim it makes sense. We saw what happened. But what could this mean in human claim? That she ran away and got caught by the culprit? But it feels like, with the way she was talking on the phone, she was out of danger for the time being. You shouldn't be able to have a casual conversation over the phone if the killer is right in front of you. So, did the culprit come partway through the phone call and kill her? Nah, that can't be right. After all, this room was locked. Oh, like hell that counts for anything. If the culprit had stolen a master key from one of the victims, the fact that it was locked is pretty much meaningless. But there are no external wounds other than her head. In which case, should I assume that fatal wound she was prepared to die from and the actual wound that destroyed her head were two different events? Both of them made to the same part of her body? In other words, Jessica was struck severely to the head and received an incredible bad wound. Then she called me, and either lost consciousness or died while on the phone. I mean, if we're talking two different events, one could be poisoning and the other, like, getting shot afterwards. And then the culprit came and destroyed her head for real. Or something. After being called to this room, Jessica was attacked by the culprit and seriously injured. And the culprit thought they killed her and went away for the time being. But then Jessica miraculously started breathing again and called me with a literal dying message. And then the culprit realized that they had failed in killing her and rushed back to deliver the final blow to Jessica, who had lost consciousness from massive blood loss. That seems to make sense, more or less. That actually does sound valid. She got hit with possibly like a blunt object in the head, fell unconscious, our culprit left the room, but surprise surprise, Jessica, with her last dying breath, went to the phone and talked to Beller. She says, "They got me," which makes sense in that context, and that she will die with her head spitting blood, because she thought that she wasn't gonna survive for so long after the first hit. It is one of those situations where a person gets hit in the head and falls unconscious, but after a while, they wake up and then for a couple of more minutes, they wake up and try to do something, but in the end, they die because of the blood loss and such. That is a situation that I can totally see. So after that, the culprit came back and finished their job in the end. Yeah. Like, either it is all staged, the way I described it before, or it is how Badler describes it here. I mean, it also makes sense how the culprit came back. Like, the culprit thought that they killed Jessica, they left the room, and I guess they decided to check the phone, like, in some other room somewhere. But they realized that, hey, Jessica is actually... No, wait, hold on a second. Nah. Actually, no way. Hold on. Yeah, I think I may actually be right on that one, in the sense that our culprit tried to use the phone on something, but when they opened the phone and such, the culprit heard the conversation between Jessica and Beller and realized, oh fuck, Jessica is still alive. I better go back and kill Jessica for good. Yeah, that is possible, because for a second I was thinking that these phones are like one way. Like, you cannot use like a second phone to hear on the conversation about another person. Man, it reminds me of my childhood when we still had the usual phones, not the cell phones or like the smartphones that we have, like normal phones and such. And in my house we had two phones. Like, and one phone was used by, like, let's say my mother. They were talking to somebody. I could use the second phone that is in the house to hear on the conversation. it certainly was possible. So maybe in that sense, it is possible here as well. Except for how Jessica was able to accurately predict the form of that final blow. And there was one more thing that bugged me about the phone call from Jessica. Jessica said this. She said it almost as though she had witnessed George Aniki being killed. But you certainly could see the rose garden from the window in Jessica's room. The arbor that George Aniki had been called out to was very far away. You can only just make out the roof. Add on the fact that it was the night of a typhoon, and it's very hard to imagine that she was able to witness everything that happened by the arbor from this window. And most important of all, Jessica left before George Aniki. So she shouldn't have known that George Aniki's test had taken place by the arbor. True. So either Jessica was told by the culprit how George died, or she was there at the arbor when it happened, and witnessed George's death with her very own eyes. Or it can be vice versa. George was forced to come here to Jessica's room. He gets killed in front of Jessica, and then his body was moved to the arbor. Like, some movements have been made here between the arbor and Jessica's room. What kind of movements? Well, I can tell you, but it's one of those. I mean, if I am to think back on the magical claims and how Jessica got teleported to the arbor, it does make me think that at some point, like, Jessica was at the arbor, either intentionally or she was forced by the hidden culprit to go there. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised that Jessica was the one that killed George, not the hidden culprit. Not just in magic claim, but in human claim as well. Why all this happened? I couldn't tell you. How did Jessica know that George Aniki had been killed? Then, in the course of my search of the entire mansion, I found Kirie-san's corpse as well. She was in an old guest room, tucked away on the first floor. And this was where all us relatives used to stay before the guest house was built. The situation with Kirie was just like Jessica's. She was probably killed during her phone call with me. Corpse discovered in the guest room inside the mansion. There was a single hole right in the center of her forehead. It seems reasonable to think that she was shot with a gun or something. A demon stake was rammed into her forehead, but it is difficult to imagine that this was the cause of death. I didn't miss. I missed on purpose to torment her. I mean, I can totally see that happening. In fact, it is as I said before, that was clearly intentional. The receiver was hanging untidily, and Kirie-san was collapsed beside it. But the way she had been killed was very different from Jessica. Her head wasn't smashed. Instead, something like a stake with an occult-like design was buried into her forehead. It was too gruesome for me, so I pulled it out. It was only after putting it that I realized that this might get me into trouble with the police later. George and Jessica didn't have stakes though. Now that they mention it. I wonder why. 'Cause we know about the Twilights and such. Gouge the head and kill, gouge the knee and kill. And thus, you would think of stakes for those. But we did see stakes for the second Twilight as well. For example, Hideyoshi and Eva's deaths in the second Twilight. And they got hit with the stakes as well. But in those cases, I didn't hear a single, I didn't hear a single thing about the stakes. Neither in Jessica's case, nor in George's case, if Beller found one of those there. So even though it was probably a little late now, I laid it by Kirie-san's side. Its tip was sharp, and stained with enough blood that it must have penetrated fully to the brain. I didn't know what kind of metal it was made of, but it was about as heavy as a paperweight. Certainly, if you were stabbed all out with something like this, it might cause a terrible wound. I probably understood what this stake meant. Yeah, I know this. It's the method of killing from the fourth Twilight onwards in the Witch's Epitaph. That gouge with a stake and kill thing. Probably. However, the human skull is very hard. Even with all one's strength, could he really pierce through it this sharply? No. The way I reason it, this stake wasn't the cause of death. It was just used to damage the corpse after death. She was probably killed by being shot with a gun or something, like George Aniki, and the stake was stuck into the hole left by the gun. That is what I'm thinking. Still, do you not notice any details that tell us that a gun was shot though? That is what I'm most curious about. Thinking about it that way, everything works out. But Was Kirie-san really killed with a gun? She had said this on the phone as well. Kirie-san was under attack even though she was holed up inside a locked room. And this room actually was locked. And she had said something about a golden thread like flying in through the keyhole and attacking her. And in fact, there were 4 places around Kirie-san's corpse with holes that could have been caused by some kind of attack. Okay, that's good. That's actually pretty good. So it can be a gun. Like, do you notice anything different about the head though? I mean, if the gun was powerful enough, maybe it went through the head. In which case, there will be a hole on the back of Kirie's head. If not, then maybe it is safe to assume that the bullet is still inside Kirie's head in that case. Like, if you notice like a hole on the back of Kirie's head as well, then yeah, it's definitely safe to assume that it was a gun. Or a spear, I guess. I guess that can be a thing as well. Or a sword. Let's not forget about swords. Like a katana. But still, a golden thread attacked her through the keyhole. I looked at the door from Kirie-san's perspective. If it had been one of those old locks like you see in old mystery movies, where you can peek through the other side, I can understand that something might potentially have come through it. But even though the doors in this mansion were old-fashioned, the locks were the familiar average cylinder style that you could find in any normal houses. In other words, there was no hole going all the way through by construction. Huh. So no matter how thin an object it might have been, it's impossible to imagine that it could have penetrated through the keyhole from the outside and attacked her. Cylinder lock. Keyhole. But the Kirie-san had definitely said that something like a golden thread had flown in through the keyhole. And spun around and around, aiming for her, attacking her. A golden thread attacking through the keyhole. I couldn't understand what it meant at all. If we are talking human claim, what could this mean exactly? I mean, I was talking before about how this could have been staged, and that Kirie-san was forced by the hidden culprit to say some stuff near the phone and all that. Reason why our killer apparently took so long to kill Kirie, with all those shots missing and such. But what about the keyhole? Does this mean that Kirie actually did an oopsie? In some way? Cause if Badler is alive and he actually sees the lock over here, we would question the keyhole. Which is probably not what the culprit / Kirie wanted in the first place. So either Kirie did an oopsie about the keyhole, that, or all this conversation that we had with Kirie actually happened in a completely different room, where the keyhole was actually, like, you know, the usual, you peek through it and you can see the other room, not the one that we see here. Like, the conversation and the death happened in that other room, and thus her body was transferred all the way here. But why? Because if that happened, then our culprit would also have to create like bullet holes, like in the walls and the floor, like right here in this particular room as well, to make it look like all the conversation and her death happened in this room. But that can easily be debunked if we are to check every single room and find out if there are like any other bullet wounds. Not bullet wounds, but bullet holes in the walls as well. Because a gun was shot in that other room. So you would think that bullet went somewhere. Unless the culprit actually opened the window and shot through the window so that bullets / bullet holes wouldn't be in this room. But still, even if we're talking about switching rooms and such, for what purpose? Unless the other room was actually special. Our culprit wanted us to find Kirie, but they didn't want to find that other room, because that room must be special. Wherever Kirie was when they made that phone call, it must have been in a special room where the hidden culprit doesn't want Beller to go to. Maybe the jail cell that we've seen in Quadorian, where the phone was. Maybe Kirie was killed there, but then our culprit tried to get the body all the way to the mansion, like inside one of these rooms, and create all this setup to make us think that this room is where Kirie died, when in actuality it was in the jail cell. That, or maybe the study room. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking this. Or maybe not. Maybe I'm not overthinking it. I guess I'll think about it. Wait, actually, Kirie-san predicted I probably wouldn't be able to understand all this. And not just Kirie. Jiga said it over the phone too. No. Since the very beginning, from the time we talked with Goda-san Kumasawa, and got the phone call from Uncle Kraus's group, everyone has been saying the same consistent thing. Grandfather is summoning witches and demons, and killing people with magic. We witnessed it happening with our very own eyes. No tricks, no illusions. No choice but to believe it. They all said it, with one voice. Oh, it was mentioned before that Goda-san and Kumasawa-san didn't really, say, like, in great detail what happened, because presumably it was so confusing and so out of this world that they couldn't possibly believe that actually happened. But all they said that it was so horrible they couldn't believe it. I don't remember them actually saying all this stuff in detail. When the mysterious woman calling herself Beatrice appeared, even I pretty much believed that she was a real witch and might start summoning goat monsters right and left. However, after being left alone for a whole day, once my feeling of tension faded completely, I had a level enough head to think that this was way too stupid to possibly be true. In an extraordinary situation where their lives were exposed to danger, did they just lose their heads a little and mistakenly think that a witch was attacking them with magic? But multiple people testified to the same effect, and on top of that, none of their opinions contradicted one another. If it had been a single person's statement, I'd be able to suspect that they just didn't see what they thought they saw. But doing that now is pretty difficult. Then, right next to the back door, I found Uncle Kraus with his head house destroyed. If we are to think in human claim, the fact that everyone went with this kind of story is just so weird. It's as if every single one of them was in on it. That they were forced to say all this stuff about magic and witches and demons. or they worked together with a hidden culprit. Like, if Butler is important to Beatrice, then I guess part of Beatrice's or Shannon's or some unknown hidden culprit's plan was to make Butler believe in that stuff in HumanClaim. Like, I can understand some of them being part of the plan, but everyone? If it's Shannon, then I can see the servants helping her in constructing this plan. Hell, even Jessica and George, if I'm to stretch it, that they went along with Shannon's plan, but Kyrie? Kraus? Cause let me say this again, folks. Even if some of these people were in cahoots with Shannon, or were forced by Shannon to do what they had to do in order to make Butler believe in magic, even if I'm starting to question my theory in regards to Butler's perspective and the magic resistance and, have to come up with something new, the fact still stands that Butler still hasn't witnessed any magic happen in this game. Hell, Beatrice said that goats and demons will start popping up after the test, and yet nothing happened. So this tells me that whatever the reason is for all this happening, if everyone is involved in this, then this must be freaking huge. Like, this could be really huge. It's, well, okay. Honestly, I don't want to spoil it, but one of Hercule Poirot's murder mystery books has this revelation that everyone was involved. Not just one or two people, but everyone. And now, after all this, Butler is left alone for an entire day. Like, whatever it is, this sin that Beatrice keeps mentioning, it must have been pretty bad for all this to have happened. And for all this to have happened, it's like, for our hidden culprit, whether it is Shannon or anyone else, they must be quite a masterful tactician to have set up everything like this. It's so interesting. I was about to say that it is conflicting, because I had that whole thing before where I said that Shannon or Beatrice, they are such broken messes. They don't even know how to think. They don't even know how to feel most of the time. So it is up to us to determine Shannon or Beatrice's true characters and such, even if they don't even know themselves. And yet I'm talking about them as if they are such masterful tacticians that they rival even the most skilled serial killers in like murder mystery fiction and such. But it is possible. I mean, logical intelligence and emotional intelligence, they're not one and the same. They are two different things. One can be intelligent logically and not as intelligent. Okay, I don't want to say that they are dumb. Like Beatrice and Shannon are dumb emotionally. They are strong. Like, they are intelligent emotionally. It's just that they don't know how to control those emotions, or don't even know how to think about some of the stuff. So, yeah, it's quite something. Even though he had escaped the dungeon of Quadorian, and somehow made it out of the secret underground passage and all the way here, he was killed. My god, I don't even know how long these parts are gonna be. Like, this has been the most amount of time that I've talked by myself in this. Like, I keep pausing the game and all that. Like, I know some of you are not gonna mind that. In fact, I've seen you guys really enjoy these segments where I talk and talk and talk about this stuff. But for those of you who do not like that I just keep pausing the game to talk about it, well, you're gonna sit here and listen to my theories and you're gonna like it! Yeah. I always enjoy saying something like that. I always enjoy saying that, like, you're gonna sit here and do as I say and you're gonna like it. I always love when I say stuff like that. It's like during those times when I had like technical difficulties with my video editor, like video editor, and apparently at that point it couldn't render in like 1080p, so I had no choice but to render it in 720p. And I know it's not the highest quality, but I had no choice. I had to render that in 720p and release that part like that day. You're just gonna sit through the video and watch it at 720p and you're gonna like it. Yeah, okay. It was a stake with an occult design, just like the one that was driven into Kirie-san's forehead. In this situation, it was very hard to imagine that the stake was the murder weapon. He was killed with a powerful gun like the six in the dining hall. And all that, and after death, he was stuck with a stake, like Kirie-san. I wonder if the golden thread that Kirie-san spoke of attacked Uncle Kraus too. A demon stake was rammed into the destroyed portion of his head. None can escape the Chister's golden arrows. So not only did we find no stake on Jessica and George, but Kraus here has the stake on his forehead, which makes no sense in the context of the epitaph. If Kirie had her forehead struck with a stake, Kraus should be hit with it somewhere else on the body. Or vice versa. Kraus was hit in the forehead and Kirie should have been struck with the stake somewhere else, but no. It's as if our hidden culprit gave up on the ritual in this particular game. Like it didn't even matter. But if they gave up on that, why have them struck with a stake to begin with? Does there exist some kind of tool, like an endoscope, which is very thin but can be moved about at will? And they can also attack people? No way. I never even heard of anything like that. Well, yeah, so, if I voiced that suspicion to one of my relatives, perhaps they would say, I wouldn't put it past the grandfather to make one. Since I cannot refute the existence of a golden thread X that can be moved at will and attack people, my only options are either to accept this completely incomprehensible weapon, or to accept that these murders were committed with magic. To find the next corpse, I had to go out through the back door and search around outside of it. Behind the mansion, in the wild-grown bushes that were almost swallowed up by the forest, was something like an old well. And right next to it were the corpses of Dr. Nanjo and Shannon-chan. Both corpses had their heads smashed. And there was a stake lying right next to each other of their destroyed heads. And they were unstuck in. All the corpses were atrocious, but having to look directly at Shannon-chan's lovely face, half of which was blown off, was very painful. Then there was the well, inside which, I was told, was a secret underground passage to the mysterious mansion, Kuwadori. A demon stake was lying next to a corpse. A demon stake was lying next to a corpse. The witnesses understand one thing at least. It was not the stake that killed them. You know, I keep talking about Shannon being the culprit, and yet here she is, presumed dead. I mean, we could check her pulse and see if she's still alive. Like, maybe she's faking her death. Still, her head is smashed like a pumpkin. And you know what? This isn't the first time, though. If I'm to think of Shannon as the one responsible for all this, it can make you question if she was the one who did it back in the previous games, because of this stuff. In Game 1, Shannon was found dead in the storage warehouse. In Game 2, she died in Natsu's room. In Game 3, she died in the parlor earlier in the first Twilight. In similar fashion to Game 1. And now this. Like, at face value, it makes you think that she is just as much of a victim as everyone else. As if there is nothing special to her. I mean, as I have stated like many times before, just because it was stated in red at times that Shannon died, it can be that her personality died, and a new personality has risen. Either Sayo or Beatrice. But, you know, it still stands that all these personalities should still share the same body. And yet, here she is. Here's her body. Like, right in front of us. Like, half her head smashed, out of all things. Like, if there were like no external wounds, and maybe if we are to think that she died of poisoning in similar fashion to Maria, then I mean, we will think that she's faking her death even more, but there will be the high chance of us checking her pulse and see if she is still alive. In fact, it will be a higher risk of us checking the pulse and see if she is alive if she had like no external wounds. The fact that she has external wounds, like her head getting smashed, it will be rendered pointless to even check her pulse and see if she is alive and such. So yeah, if they are trying to distract us from the possibility that she's faking her death, her doing it like this would be a lot better than making it look like she was poisoned or something like that. But I don't know, like in some other instances, it's like either Shannon's body was found by other people in Game 3, or Battler himself found her body, but he couldn't investigate her body at that point. Either Hideyoshi was the only one who investigated her body in Game 1, or Rosa stopped Battler from approaching her body in Game 2. So, in all those situations, one could go and say that people like Rosa and Hideyoshi did not want other people to investigate her body, because she was still alive at those points, presumed dead. But here she is, plain as day. Either this is a fake body, or Shannon is such a good actor, she can pretend to be dead, like, real good. Like, can we just check her pulse, maybe? Can I just slap her in the face to wake up? Will she react if I touch her boobies with a finger? Would that count as necrophilia? Well, I guess it depends. Maybe, like, it depends if she is alive or dead. It's like Schrodinger's cat.